Welcome to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Bob Dancer is America's premier video poker writer and teacher. He's written 10 books, including Video Poker for the Intelligent Beginner and the best-selling $1 Million Video Poker. He helped develop the computer software Video Poker for Winners, and in 2004 he was inducted into the Video Poker Hall of Fame. Richard Munchkin has been a professional advantage player for over 30 years and is in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. His book, Gambling Wizards, Conversations with the World's Greatest Gamblers, is a testament to the many ways you can succeed at gambling. The goal of the show is that you'll be a more knowledgeable gambler tomorrow than you were yesterday. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is poker player and tax expert Russell Fox. Russell Fox trained as a chemical engineer, but with jobs scarce in that field, ended up in finances and taxes. He now lives in Las Vegas, plays poker, and helps people with their taxes. Russell Fox, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
I'm glad to be here.
Recently, Poker Hall of Famer Daniel Negreanu tweeted that the Bank of America and MasterCard have decided they don't want his business. Apparently, he makes too many cash deposits and withdrawals. Russell Fox, since many professional gamblers deal in cash and they prefer to have their money in a bank account than in a mattress, what's the best way to handle this?
Unfortunately, if you're going to bank at a very large bank, you're very likely to run into this problem. I've had my clients, for no particular reason, at both Bank of America and at a couple other banks, had their accounts closed. The issues are about threefold. There's a compliance issue. All banks are required to know their customers, and especially if you make cash deposits of a little bit under $10,000 frequently, you can get in trouble, both with the IRS because of suspicious activity reports being filed, and second, it triggers internal compliance audits on your account. And that's the last thing you really want. If you make deposits of more than $10,000, a currency transaction report is issued. That usually does not trigger a compliance audit within a bank. As far as with the IRS, currency transaction reports are very rarely looked at, whereas suspicious activity reports are always looked at, 100% of them. So you don't want a SAR filed on you. A currency transaction report is not a big deal. The other issue, of course, is a large bank, and I'll use Bank of America as an example. Their compliance officers, probably in Charlotte, where they're headquartered, and you're never, as an individual, going to be able to talk to them. If you're banking at a smaller bank, a regional bank, a credit union, and you go in and set up an account with the bank and you basically tell them, hey, I'm a professional gambler. This is what I do for a living. I've been filing tax returns. I'm going to have cash deposits. I'm going to have cash withdrawals. Do you have a problem with this? You're up front with them. With a smaller bank, especially if you're in Las Vegas, I doubt you're going to run into an issue. Whereas with Bank of America, you're not. If you have the wrong deposit at the wrong time, you are likely to run into an issue.
Yeah, I have to say I know quite a number of people who've had their accounts closed. Chase seems to be the worst at doing this, barring the most people. One of the benefits, one of the reasons that people want to go to the bigger bank is they deposit their money here in Las Vegas and now they decide to go play a casino in Philadelphia. There's a branch there, whereas if you're using a local bank, and you can go withdraw there, if you're using a local bank, you may not have that option. And another thing that happens is they're also closing accounts for people who access their safe deposit box too often. They think that looks suspicious, so they close their accounts as well.
And some of this also relates to the Patriot Act, which requires bankers to know their customers. A good strategy, by the way, for anyone who is a professional gambler is, while you don't need a second bank account today, set one up. Go find a local bank, a small bank, a credit union. Set up an account today when you don't need it, so it's there when you do need it.
Good advice.
So how would you suggest someone solve that problem that they're I want to have my money in Philadelphia, I would prefer to not fly with $100,000 because, you have the danger of the police or TSA stealing it from you. Do you have any suggestions for those people?
Well, you can also, most casinos will accept wires. You just have to call in advance, find out what the casino procedure is for a wire. But if you're going to be gambling $100,000, trust me, the casino wants your action.
Well, not mine. I mean, that works fine for a poker or a video poker player, but for blackjack players, yeah, not so much.
Yeah, we're going to wire $100,000, but we're not going to tell you our name.
Yeah. It'll be the guy in the dark glasses and the blonde wig.
The other thing is a lot of regional banks have correspondent banks in various cities. So that, and for example, if you're banking with a credit union, they may be, they're probably members of the National Association of Credit Unions, and they may be able to arrange for you to take a withdrawal from a local credit union in Philadelphia, in your example.
I remember when I was about 22 and I first moved out, and my father told me, you know what, it's really important to get to know your banker. And back then, you knew your banker. You could go in and meet the guy and talk to him. And, I didn't think that was still possible. But I think you're right. If you did use a small local bank, you have a much better chance of that.
I'm not going to recommend my bank. I've never asked them this question recently. But when I go into my bank, which is Bank of the West, and make a deposit, the tellers know me by name. Okay, I go in there every 2 weeks, make a deposit. I check my safety deposit box because that's a place where we store backups for our computer system, and I'm in there once a month, perhaps twice a month. But, they know me, they know my business, and they're expecting this. It's when you do something unexpected that problems happen. And so if you're up front with the bank and say, hey, I am going to be making large cash deposits, is there a problem? And with Bank of America, and from your example, Chase, there apparently is, don't bank there, find a different bank.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to something else. Not so long ago, the IRS was considering the W-2G threshold, lowering it from $1,200 to $600. We players were certainly against it. Casinos were against it. We haven't heard much about this. Is this dead, or is this still waiting to bite us?
It's probably dead, but not guaranteed. The IRS did have a public hearing on this back, I want to say it was June of last year, and not only were 99% of the speakers against it, about 99% of the comments that were submitted were against it. Both Nevada senators were against it and had commented on it. So the chance of it passing, given also the costs involved, which the IRS did not realize the amount of basically how much it costs a casino to hand pay to issue that W-2G. It is expensive. And for that to go up by 500%, it is not an automated process. It would be extraordinarily expensive. I don't see it happening. But could it? In theory, yes.
All right. Let's assume I make $100,000 a year gambling on average with big swings, but I have another job and I make $200,000 a year. Can I file as a professional gambler?
Maybe. Okay. I knew you'd love that answer, but it's based on facts and circumstances. You can have multiple occupations. For example, I'll use a tax professional. Okay, let's say I was a seasonal tax professional, only worked February, March, and April, the big months for tax preparation. The rest of the year, I owned a flower shop. Is there anything wrong with my having two businesses? Of course not. They're both supporting my livelihood. Nothing at all wrong with that. Change the flower shop to being a professional gambler. Anything wrong with that? No. I could easily be making $200,000 from tax preparation 3 months of the year, depending on my clientele, how much I charge, and $100,000 with huge swings from gambling the rest of the year. Those facts and circumstances would support being a professional gambler. I want to point out that a professional gambler in such a position needs to keep excellent records. It's the biggest fault I see amongst my clientele and amongst almost all professional gamblers is They do not keep good records. It is by far the most important thing in dealing with the IRS.
Is there anything wrong with keeping your records on a spreadsheet?
The only thing is that you want to back up that spreadsheet regularly so you can prove it was contemporaneous. The regulation on gambling records and your gambling log says you need to be keeping a contemporaneous log. It doesn't have to be in the format of a log. There are various tax court decisions where a calendar has been accepted, but it can't be something created the night before an audit.
Well, and so that's the way you prove that, is by having backups throughout the year?
Backups that, for example, phone apps today, you can keep a gambling log on it. I suggest my clients email that log to themselves so they can pull the emails to say, hey, you see this entry on February 12th? It's the same in every single one of these. Here are my emails.
Right, so I use Google Docs, right, and I use a spreadsheet through Google Docs, which I do enter from my phone. But, yeah, I haven't, because it is based in the cloud, I don't back it up because it's already there, you know what I mean? So I should download different versions of it during the course of the year to prove that I didn't make it all up the day before the audit.
Unless Google Docs saves the various versions. It might save the last few versions, but you'd want to keep a separate log for each year. Definitely keep a separate log for each year. That way, if you could see that they're different, especially in that situation. If it's not keeping enough versions, just keep emailing it to yourself, and then you have records of it.
Okay. And now the other thing is, we've got like 2 days left before the end of the year. What can our listeners do now, or what should they be doing within the next 2 days that might save them money on this year's taxes?
Well, there isn't that much as far as gambling. I mean, if you're a professional gambler and let's say you're planning to go somewhere for gambling, if you buy the ticket today or tomorrow, and that includes charging it on your credit card today or tomorrow, it is deductible this year. Most taxpayers are cash basis taxpayers, so when they spend the money, which is either going into a store and spending money on something, or spending it on their credit card, it is deductible immediately. So that's something that can be done in the next 2 days. You could buy a computer. You do need to take delivery of it. It has to be in service. But you could do that. I'm installing a new computer right now.
Selling stock, losing stocks?
Yes, that's a general thing. You can capital gain transactions or capital losses. You can harvest tax losses. If it's a short sale, you may not have enough time left. Typically, those are based on settlement date rather than sale date. So a short sale typically takes 3 days to settle, and today is the 29th, and the 32nd won't work.
Right. And a professional gambler cannot carry forward a loss, right?
Correct.
So if you're even right now, you should not play for the next 2 days.
That's not necessarily the case, because what if you see a huge advantage play, and it's going to be gone perhaps in 3 days, and it's something where you think you're going to make a profit? I can't say to avoid, something that has a very high positive expected value. But from a tax perspective, yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Similar question. Let's assume this year, today, I'm down $10,000. But I have $20,000 in uncollected free play in one or more casinos out there that I could go and collect. Let's say I can collect it at 100%. So I can be, without really gambling, anywhere between minus 10,000 and plus 10,000. I'm filing as a professional gambler. Are there advantages to being plus? Are there advantages to being minus? Is being exactly zero a big red flag?
Well, being exactly zero as a professional probably, and that specific number is a red flag. You can always be plus 1, plus 2, plus 3. One of the things about it is, though, if you have a gambling loss, that loss is lost for tax purposes. Internal Revenue Code Section 165D says that gambling losses in excess of wins will not be allowed. The tax court, in a full precedential decision called Mayo v. Commissioner, upheld this. So if you lose money overall as a gambler, be professional or an amateur, the losses in excess of wins go away for tax purposes. Professional gamblers are one of the few professions you cannot lose money for taxes. However, your business expenses are allowed. So let's say you end up at plus $1 and you have $5,000 of business expenses. You'd end up with a loss of $49.99. That loss is allowed, creating a net operating loss or a loss on your business that could create a net operating loss that you can either carry forward or carry back 2 years.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, that's good to know.
That is also part of the Mayo decision, and the IRS agrees with that decision.
That's good to know. I didn't know that. Okay.
LLC, Limited Liability Corporation. Is there an advantage to being Bob Dancer LLC insofar as a gambling entity?
Probably not. And the reason for this is gambling is considered generally unearned income. Earned income is
like hell, but okay.
Well, from a tax perspective, definitely. Earned income is when you have wages. You know, you're working for Clayton Financial and Tax LLC. Mm-hmm. You are self-employed. So professional gambler morphs unearned income into earned income. One issue, of course, is if you are gambling in a casino, and let's say you have an LLC and you win a jackpot, the casino is going to hand you a W-2G in your name, not the LLC's name. They will ignore it. So you have a problem there. You have to then move the income from you personally to the LLC, which can be done. You just send yourself a 1099. The second issue is it's of dubious legality. Because of this has never been tested in tax court. So nobody knows what's going to happen. The typical strategy used, by the way, is to form an LLC, to make a tax election to be taxed as an S-corporation, which is a small corporation. You pay yourself a salary with full payroll. You know, you go to a real payroll company, have wages, and those wages need to be paid at least monthly. You pay yourself a reasonable salary. If you are making $100,000 a year, 0 is not a reasonable salary. It needs to be, say, $50,000 paid monthly. So you'd pay yourself, a little over $4,000 each month with normal payroll deductions, FICA, federal income tax, etc. You then take the remainder of your profit as distributions, and you save on self-employment tax on the distributions, which are not subject to that. Again, this is of dubious legality. I have clients who have done this and are doing this, but I do warn them that it is unknown if it will hold up in court.
Huh. So this brings up an important issue. So the benefit of filing as a professional gambler is that you get to write off your business expenses. So if you fly around a lot and you have a lot of airfare and hotel and stuff like that, that's big write-off. But if you don't do that, the downside is that you pay self-employment. So now you have another option if you decide to not file as a professional. Let's say that I make $100,000, but I live here in Vegas and I don't go anywhere. So if I file as just other income, I save all that self-employment tax, and I'm only paying 15% on it, right?
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right.
And, okay, so is there any possibility, has the IRS ever stepped in and said, oh, no, you're running this as a business, you are a professional, and you have to file as a professional?
For the first 8 years of my practice, I started in 1999. The IRS only looked at professional gamblers and said, oh, you can't be a professional. However, around 2007, 2008, the IRS's Automated Underreporting Unit, which is called the AUR program, is now targeting people who file as amateur gamblers who are really professionals. And they absolutely are targeting this. And I've had clients who meet one of the exceptions. I have a lot of poker player clients who are full-time students going to college and playing poker. That is one of the exceptions that allows you. Being a full-time student is considered a job. That's just how the regulations are written. So a full-time student can file as an amateur, even if that's his only source of income. He gets a choice. You and I do not get choices. We have to look at our facts and circumstances.
Well, but, I mean, in Bob and my case, we do other things. We have a radio show. We have...
Oh, we make big bucks on a radio show.
Yeah. No, but I mean, we both write, we have books, we do radio shows, we do other things. So if we were to choose to not file as a professional, I mean, in our case, it's sort of better to. But I mean, I can see cases for other people where, you know.
Well, when I look at this, because this comes up, I have to evaluate: does this person meet one of the exceptions? For me to put something on a tax return, I have to have a 40% chance of being upheld. That's under 50-50, mind you. But it's not, let us assume that I had someone come in, age 38, not retired, no other sources of income, making $150,000 a year playing video poker, or any other form of gambling. Says, I want to file as an amateur. That doesn't meet the smell test. He's almost certainly going to have to file as a professional. Now, if he played once, entered a poker tournament, first time ever playing poker, won $150,000, decided not to work the rest of the year, well, that pretty much meets the smell test. He got lucky.
I got you.
And there, I think I'd be justified filing as an amateur. I'd also advise him he's likely to get an IRS notice, but, you didn't gamble regularly. You don't sound like Mr. Gretzinger. Gretzinger is the case that allows a professional gambler to file as a professional. You sound like somebody who walked in a casino one day. You didn't pull a slot machine handle, but you sound like somebody like that. And that is the kind of person who is an amateur gambler. One last point on this. There are some states where you do not want to file as an amateur gambler because there are various states that do not allow gambling losses on their tax returns, especially in the Northeast and Midwest.
So, yeah, because I know, for example, Connecticut is one of those where you can't deduct gambling losses from wins. But if you file as a professional, then you can?
Yes, you can.
Ah, okay. Even on their state return?
Yes, it goes on a Schedule C. And I am, as far as I know, every single state, and I've filed in almost all of them by now, I've never had a problem with a professional gambler deducting his losses.
Ah. I'm learning a lot today.
Good. Are you taking notes? You have a website called taxabletalk.com. In December, you made somewhere between 10 and 20 posts in it. Who's this blog addressed to, and what kind of articles can be found there?
The blog is addressed basically to my clientele, which is a high percentage of them are gamblers. So anytime there is something out there that's new on gambling, I generally will post on it. I always post every year on the tax impact of the main event of the World Series of Poker, mainly because most people who read, oh, someone won $8 million, don't realize, no, he really won $5 million. He lost $3 million to taxes. I also cover other things. I look at it in a more humorous vent than other tax bloggers, mainly because tax is dull. It's dry.
We don't think of tax as a source of comedy.
Yeah.
Well, but there is comedy in it if you look at certain aspects of it. I tend to focus and write in a more humorous vent, mainly because it will make the dryness go away to a degree. I will post in 2 days my annual Tax Offender of the Year, where I highlight somebody who has taken tax to a new level of bozo behavior. I have in the past written about people who hired hitmen to kill witnesses, which is somewhat serious, and luckily...
I'd be careful about naming them.
They're not going anywhere for a long time.
Okay.
Somebody who decided to burn down a building so it would hide his tax evasion. That didn't work. I hired a voodoo priestess who basically said that no one would ever catch her. She got caught. And somebody who committed tax evasion to basically get back at the judge who ruled against him.
That sounds like a real good plan.
Yeah.
None of those magically worked.
Do you ever do government agencies as Bozo of the Year?
Yes, I have highlighted the U.S. Department of Justice after the IRS scandal. I think most people are aware of what's happened with nonprofits. The IRS targeted conservatives, organizations. You wouldn't want to have been named, the Tea Party group of Libertyville. A lot of conservatism in that name. And they basically targeted those and did not approve them. The U.S. Department of Justice supposedly did an investigation, but it was probably the least thorough investigation of all time. So I targeted the DOJ because I felt that they should have done a fair investigation because it was clear to everyone in tax that, yeah, there was targeting.
So how about one of the ways of one of the things we want to do is get money into IRAs and 401k. Like, how did Mitt Romney get $150 million in his IRA? Or who cares how he did it? How do we do it? How do we funnel all our money into tax-free growth?
I'd like $150 million anywhere. Doesn't have to be in an IRA.
It takes me months to earn that much.
Well,
and I don't want.
Well, I would love to have that $150 million too, but neither of you are giving me that much for being on the air. So
right.
But there are lots of retirement plans
checks
available
in the mail
for professional gamblers. Amateur gamblers cannot use their gambling winnings for retirement accounts, but professionals can. You can contribute to a solo 401k. You've got 2 days to do that and set up the account. The account must be set up in the calendar year. So if you don't have one, you would have to set this up by the 31st.
But you can fund it.
You can fund it after the end of the year. But the account must exist during the calendar year.
Now, what are the requirements to set that up? What do you have to
fill out paperwork, a brokerage firm, bank. Almost everyone wants your money.
So as long as you're filing a Schedule C, do you have to earn a certain amount?
Well, you have to have enough earned income to support it. You need roughly, there are two kinds of contributions to a solo 401k. They're the employer and employee portions, and typically you can do $17,500 right off the bat as long as you have $17,500 of income as what is deferred from your, quote, salary, and then profit sharing for the rest. A individual 401k allows you to defer more income faster than a SEP IRA. That's the other big retirement account. SEP IRA is easier as far as less paperwork. You don't have to set that up yet. You have until the latter of April 15th or your timely filed return, including extensions to set it up. And there, the profit sharing is about 20% of your net income, up to a maximum of $53,000 for 2015.
Okay, so I'm sorry. What's the benefit of the 401 over the SEP?
You can put more money in faster. You can have not only the profit sharing contribution, you can have the deferral of your salary, so to speak.
And what's the maximum that can go in there?
Maximum is still $53,000.
Okay, so if it's the same maximum, and we're at the end of the year anyway, it wouldn't really matter?
No, it matters because depending on your income level. If your income's, say, $1 million, it doesn't matter. It's $53,000.
Okay.
But if your income is, say, $100,000, you're going to be limited to about $19,500 with a SEP IRA. With a 401k, you're going to have about $36,000.
Oh.
But you made $1 million, so it's no problem.
Yeah. Okay. I have another question.
He didn't immediately deny that. Huh? That's interesting.
So let's say, I mean, I know the answer to this, but I'm just going to throw it out there because I know our listeners are thinking it. So let's say that I had a bad year and I'm stuck $30,000 this year, and Bob had a great year and he won $250,000. So
nothing wrong with this story so far.
Right. Well,
I like this
wouldn't
story.
it behoove us to play poker tomorrow and have you lose 30 or so thousand, or
to you, of course.
To me, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
If you can put anything you want on a tax return as long as you don't get caught, but you had better really lose the money. That's the thing about taxes. Tax is the one area of law where you're guilty until proven innocent. A tax return is accepted at face value. But in an audit, you must prove everything on the return. So if you claim that you lost $30,000 magically, and that $30,000 was won by Bob on December 31st, you pretty much want to have really lost that money. If you get audited and it's discovered that that wasn't the case, that can be a felony.
Yeah, but so I say I lost the money to Richard, and Richard
And you
says,
write me a check, and I put it in my account.
Well, you didn't lose that money gambling. And that's, as far as that goes. Now,
okay, but what if I say I lost the money, and he says he won the money from me? We were playing at his house over cocktails. Who's to say otherwise?
you don't get caught, you win. You two, I'm just saying.
I mean, the bad thing would be is if I lost the money back the next week.
Yeah, exactly the same amount.
Yeah. That wouldn't be smart.
People have, really, if you look at who gets caught in tax crime, you have to be, stupid or a celebrity, or better, both. Those are the people who tend to get caught because the IRS, they have a criminal investigation department, and I'm not at all condoning and do not want to encourage anyone to cheat on their taxes. It's a lot easier to sleep at night just paying what you owe. But the people who get caught tend to be one of those two groups. People who thumb their nose at the IRS or are really stupid or are celebrities. The IRS understands the deterrence value of a celebrity, such as Richard Hatch or Wesley Snipes going to prison.
Yeah. Now, you brought in a couple of court cases here of people where video poker, I think they were both video poker players, right?
Yes.
Where and you want to talk a little bit about those, what they did wrong? And
I do. The first case is, as I look at this, is a gentleman named Michael Ferguson. Mr. Ferguson tried to basically say he was a professional gambler. He did not keep good records. But the court looked at it even more and said that we're unconvinced that you can even be a professional gambler if you put money into a machine at a casino. Because, and I'm quoting here, after all, such a machine is on the floor to make money for the casino and is not there to provide income or profit for the casino's patrons. For most individuals, gambling against a machine that is programmed to make money for the casino constitutes what the Supreme Court in Gretzinger characterized as a sporadic activity, hobby, or amusement diversion. So, remember, the tax court has a bias against the idea of being a video poker professional. And
Don't they know about hiring Bob Dancer as an expert witness?
No. The second case was a doctor, a psychiatrist in New York named Michael Merkin. And this is from 2008. He made very good money from his psychiatry practice and also tried to claim that he was a professional gambler. And his big failing among many, one was his income level was so high that it guaranteed scrutiny. And second, he did not keep good records. By far, it's the thing I tell every one of my clients. Keep good records. It's half the battle. And the third case I brought in was a gentleman here in Las Vegas named Alan Sabalik. Now, he is not a gambler. He is a bartender at the MGM. He fought the IRS on tipping, claiming that his tips were less than the IRS formula that the MGM agreed to. He kept excellent records. He represented himself in tax court, and he won. It is very rare. And the reason he won is he did the right things. He kept good records, and he could prove that, hey, I didn't make as much as I should because my bar wasn't in a great location.
So if you keep good records, and my records say that I played at the MGM over the course of the year, and my net at the MGM for this year is minus $4,200, and the IRS shows up with my player's card records and says, well, the MGM says that according to their records, you won $7,500 there this year. If my records are good in terms of everything else on the records, and I clearly have been keeping them all year long, then whose number do they use?
Well, the IRS will start with the MGM's number, of course. They will, IRS loves computer records. And, of course, the IRS will want to see, the 1099s, W-2Gs. And they really need to make sure those are in your records. But there are a lot of decisions where, in fact, these two decisions note that slot club records are insufficient and usually miss things. So it is entirely possible for the slot club record to show a profit of $7,500 where you really lost $4,200. So your $4,200, if you can show you've kept a contemporaneous log, will probably win and probably be upheld.
Okay, so now I have another question too. So for video poker players, my understanding is that I keep record, which I do keep records, by the way. I keep very detailed records. So my understanding is that I'm supposed to add up all of my wins, which I count as the session, right, and make that one total, and then add up all of my losses and make that a separate total. And those two numbers have absolutely nothing to do with my W-2Gs. So, but I talk to other video poker players who basically say, I just add up all my W-2Gs and call that my win, plus I add, 10 or 20% to it, and then I write off my losses to get to the same net so that it adds up to the same net at the bottom line of what my records say. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. Here, a lot also depends if you're a professional or an amateur.
I'm talking about professionals.
Okay. I'm going to start with amateurs.
Okay.
The IRS has a general counsel opinion that says the session method is what should be used. It is recent. I didn't print it out, but it's 2 or 3 years old. And that is something that I have used in an audit where this exact issue came up. It was an amateur gambler. He reported, I'm making numbers up here, $200,000 is the sum of his wins. His W-2Gs added to, say, $300,000. But he kept playing, so he lost some of that money back. He kept a good gambling log, and we won at audit using the sessions. Now, for a professional gambler, it's less relevant because you're taxed on the net, and a professional gambler is allowed to net his wins and losses. However, I cannot condone the idea of not reporting the total wins and losses. I'm not saying people don't do that. What you've described is absolutely how a lot of people do it. And does it change the tax? No, because a professional gambler pays tax based on the net.
It's a lot easier to do it that way.
But the problem also is you don't want to grossly understate your gross receipts. There can be issues when you understate gross receipts.
Gross receipts meaning, like there have been years that I had $3 million in W-2Gs, and my net win was, say, $200,000. Now, is that grossly understating my net receipts?
No. Your net win could be zero. It could be a loss, and you could have $3 million of W-2Gs. The two numbers, as you're well aware of, I'm well aware of, they don't necessarily have anything to do with each other.
Correct.
Especially because if you're gambling and playing video poker at a high level, literally every pool where money comes to you can issue a W-2G.
If you play for high enough stakes, yes.
So that, for a professional gambler, won't matter too much. But what you should do is, on your return, include a subsidiary schedule where you're noting the W-2G total. So it's not as if you're ignoring it. You're saying, yes, I had $3,172,000 of W-2Gs. I also have gambling losses of $2,986,000, so my net is whatever.
So do you need to include some kind of a worksheet in with your taxes on that?
Worksheet, probably not, but you should include the numbers. There are various ways of doing this. Unfortunately, the worst thing is the IRS generally does not look at subsidiary schedules until an audit happens. And unfortunately, the IRS computer is very good at looking at total of W-2Gs and trying to find that on a tax return. So, for example, especially with amateur gamblers who are reporting by session, and that number is less than the total of W-2Gs, you're probably going to get an IRS notice. You should include that note on your tax return of what you've done and why, but it's not going to prevent the notice. It will just make it a lot easier to respond to the notice.
Okay. Well, because I also play table games, I'm always going to, on the win column, be higher than whatever the total of the W-2Gs is. So, yeah. So, okay. So I shouldn't have to worry about that.
All right. We're going to take a brief break, talk about some commercials, and while Richard thinks of some more questions to ask from Mr. Fox after we come back from the commercials. South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anybody else has. From now until December 30th, which is tomorrow if you're listening live, players may use accumulated points to get half off of almost everything at the South Point. Every Sunday through Wednesday in January, a total of 17 dates, you can earn a free spin for virtual spin at your machine for every $2,000 coin in video poker or $500 coin in slots. Limit of 4 spins a day. The lowest prize is $750 in free play, which if you always get the lowest, which is unlikely, it's 0.375, which is higher than double points. It can go up to $100 in free play or $300 worth of points. This is a very nice promotion. You're playing a even game on a lot of the games in the house, like NSU with the slot club, and you're getting $30, $40, $50, $60, $70 a day in these promotions takes you an hour if you're playing the $2 machine. If you play lower levels, it'll take you a little bit longer. But this is a nice play if you live nearby. Plus, if you play that on all 17 dates, that's about 100,000 coin in, and that gets you a nice mailer. Double points will be Monday, January 18th, Martin Luther King Day, which is extra good because this is one of the days where you can earn the 4-wheel spins for your first $8,000 coin in. At the Palms, there's one last drawing in December drawing, which is going to be Saturday, January 2nd. Beginning January 1st, you start earning points for the January drawings, which happens Friday and Saturday night, 7:15. There's going to be 8 drawings. They're giving away an $6,250, and these drawings you must be at to win. For the last several months, you just needed to claim before midnight. Starting in January, you need to be there to win, and if you're not there to win, then they're going to keep drawing and somebody else is going to get it. PFP, play for prizes. From January 4th to January 15th, you earn Chevron gas cards. From January 18th to 29th, you earn Costco gift cards. Cards are redeemed at a rate of 0.2%, up to $190 a day. You keep the points. For 2 days in January, Wednesdays, January 6th and 20th, you swipe to get a random multiplier. You may earn up to 40,000 bonus points per day. Video poker, an unlimited amount at slots. At videopoker.com, it's the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get corrections on most of the games. It's a good place to practice quick quads, for example. You can get the strategy from me or from Shaq's website, but if you want correction, go to videopoker.com. For most players, you have no idea of how badly you play until you have a computer program correcting your plays. Also, if you are a gold member at videopoker.com, you can get the Video Poker for Winners software for $20 off. The game of the week, 100 play quick quads. With equal return, I personally believe Quick Quads is the most enjoyable video poker game to play. Add it to 100 play, it's a hoot if you can find good pay schedules. Quick Quads is a 6-coin per line game where you get extra quads, which are 4 of a kind, with 3 of one rank and the other 2 cards adding up to that rank, such as 99954 counts as 4 nines, or 222 ace ace counts as 4 deuces. All right, we're talking to tax expert Russell Fox. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, maybe for tax advice or because they thought you were a good poker player and wanted poker lessons, how would they get a hold of you?
For the latter, don't get a hold of me for poker lessons. I'm out of practice. Best way is email, rcfox@claytontax.com is my email address. And I typically respond, except for today, where I'm getting a new computer installed within 24 hours to all emails.
And what's your blog? What's the address?
The blog is taxabletalk.com.
Okay, so I have another question before we run out of time. So especially for machine players, you win drawings and stuff. Let's say you win a car. Now, when you win a car, that's not a W-2G, right? It's a 1099 or...
It can be either. It depends on if it's a pull of a slot machine where you win a car, it'll be a W-2G. If it's a drawing, it'll be a 1099.
Okay, so is there any problem just lumping that in with your gambling winnings?
It probably is gambling winnings. I mean, if you are gambling professionally and because you're gambling professionally, you have a 1099, sounds to me like gambling winnings.
Okay. All right. I just didn't know if there was a distinction between something you win in a drawing or...
It also will depend, a lot in the IRS depends who you get if you're audited. The IRS and gambling do not go well together. Most of the personnel at the IRS, the exception probably being the Las Vegas office where they see more gambling than anywhere else, they don't understand it. I've had audits... and I've represented taxpayers in Texas, Tennessee, Florida, New York, and California. And in those states, when I was in for an audit, the IRS auditor did not understand a lot. And so you get people who are reading regulations and trying to, basically fit square pegs in round holes because of what they think gambling is. So for those individuals, the idea that a 1099 can go on a Schedule C for other income doesn't make sense. But it absolutely can, and, if you explain it logically to them, you usually will get it right. I mean, the IRS does try. Most of their personnel, they're human beings like us.
Right. So let's say that I play blackjack and video poker, and I'm earning my living at that. But I'm also a backgammon degenerate, and every year I blow some money on the Kentucky Derby, and I have all these leaks in my game. That's still all gambling. I can still write all that off, right?
As long as you're keeping records, absolutely. Gambling is gambling, and as I joked to a client today, if you're a degenerate Keno player, yes, that's a gambling loss.
Right. Okay, yeah, good.
Are you a degenerate Keno player,
I'm
Richard?
a degenerate backgammon player. Yeah.
And a good one, too. Okay, now, are there any gambling audits that you've represented taxpayers that you're really proud of how it worked out?
I am, but I cannot give names. Okay, one of the rules I'm not allowed to disclose my clients, but if you do searches, you may find one or two of these. But I had a client audited, a typical office audit based on travel, entertainment, meals, automobile expense. And the IRS was asking for, let's say, $6,000. My client got a refund of $1,900. The client was able to basically show that he had self-prepared his return and the numbers were wrong. And we were able to show, hey, he really had more expenses than what you thought. And in an audit, if you can show it, you get it. We could show it. We had receipts. And my client didn't understand that, your airfare is fully deductible. All of your hotels, when you are traveling for gambling, they're deductible. And so he could prove those. And, IRS loves paper. We had lots of it. And so that was a successful audit.
I just have to say, I have a friend who always prepared his own taxes. And I said to him, I think that that's a hugely negative EV bet to try to do your own taxes. I mean, unless you're a tax person or whatever. But I just think, just the fact that if you do get audited, you have to go to it instead of me, like you're going to go talk to those people, that alone helps me sleep better at night.
Well, audits are always a separate engagement than tax preparation because an audit can be 2 minutes of work, it can be 200 hours of work. I would go broke if I built in audit pricing in...
Well, no, but what I mean is I'm going to feel much better. If you prepared my taxes and you're going to go talk to the IRS, I'm going to sleep way better at night than if I prepared my taxes
True.
And I have to go talk to the IRS.
That's true, but there are people who can do their own returns, and I don't have any problem with it. You just, especially the more simple the return is. Somebody who, for example, all he has is wage income, maybe a mortgage, the commercial software that's out there will handle that just fine.
Yeah.
But once you throw
Those people don't listen to our radio show.
I was about to add in, that is not the target audience of this show, and those people are going to generally want to see a tax professional. Even if they end up doing their own returns, they may want to at least 1 year pay some money to get it done right.
Yeah.
All right. We got 2 minutes left. Every week at the Las Vegas Advisor, I publish an article. And the one that came out today, Richard said if we got 2 minutes left at the end of our show, we ought to talk about it. It had to do with a player who was shortchanged by a small number of points by a casino and took 15 minutes to get it adjusted, and it was worth like a third of a penny. And but it was the principle of the thing. He didn't want the damn casino ripping off all these players. And so I'm not into principles of the things. I thought it was a huge waste of time. Now, Richard, you had a comment on this.
Yeah, I just see people making this mistake all the time. And, I call it stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. It's a big waste of time. And if you actually stop and think about how much it is you're arguing over, just move on. It's not only that, you could easily just piss people off there, which is not going to be helpful in the long run.
That's not positive EV in any ambition.
Right. Anyway, listen, we welcome your questions and encourage them. You can send them to us at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com or facebook.com/gamblingwithanedge, or you can tweet them at us at RWM21. If you want the show delivered to you automatically every week, you can sign up to do that at iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or my site, richardmunchkin.com. Or to find an archive of every old show, you can get those at bobdancer.com.
Thank you very much. Special thanks to Russell Fox, tax expert. Quite informative. Thank you. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good night.
You've been listening to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Subscribe to the show in iTunes, and episodes will be delivered to you automatically every week. Archived versions of past shows may be found at bobdancer.com and richardmunchkin.com. We welcome emails at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin are both available on Facebook and welcome your questions. The sponsors for the show are the South Point Hotel, Casino and Spa, the M Resort, the Palms Casino Resort, and the website videopoker.com. Join us again next week for another Gambling with an Edge.
Views and opinions expressed on this program were those of the hosts and guests and did not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.